Welcome to the Underdog Sniper Podcast. I'm your host, MGCovers. This is episode 73. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hope everybody had a great weekend. We have a ton to cover, some positives and definitely some negatives in the sports betting world for me. Really cool podcast. We're going to talk about a handicapper that was basically a fraud, and majority of people that are, quote, selling plays, offering their plays to the service are frauds. And this individual actually got arrested and is going to go to jail for about 10 years. So we'll end the podcast with that. So stick around for that. First thing we're going to dive into on this podcast, we're going to talk about some soccer. Now, this has been a sport that I've been obsessed with for 6 years. We'll talk about some negatives and positives with that. And my whole goal and whole reason and logic behind trying to, quote, conquer soccer was that it's a year-round sport. So if we could get it to, where we can make 3 units a month, 3 times 12, it'd be 36 extra units. But what I'm realizing is now that this is an extremely difficult sport. As of right now, I know no one that is profitable in soccer. Now, I'll have people that send me DMs, but this is an extremely, extremely difficult sport to handicap, a ton of variance, and quickly realized that this weekend. And I'll show you what happened. And just to bring you up to speed, if you watched last week's podcast, we had what we call the classes model. Very excited about this. And the way I was capping it, we were factoring in a lot of variance. You can see here from 8:15, it had like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 plays. That particular day, it went up 4 units. The next day, 1.45 units. So it was showing a ton of progress and a ton of optimism. The problem with soccer is there's just a ton of variance in it. So I ran some Monte Carlo sims. I talked about that on the podcast last week. I decided to wager live for this past Saturday. For the simple reason is we had enough data under our belt. I'd ran several Monte Carlo sims to where it would be profitable long-term, and it still is. However, on Saturday, the model had 19 plays. 19. This model went 5 and 14. 19 plays, had 5 wins and 14 losses. So you can see it here. It was actually up the day before. It went, okay, first off, it peaked at 21 units. And then this is in a very short period of time. Then it went down to like 18. And then it went this particular day. I tell you what, let's just run the numbers up here. Yeah, going into that day, going into Saturday, it was 18.9 units since 8:15. And obviously I'd done my research and knew that there would be regression, but I figured at playing that big of a volume, 19 units, it would work, the variance would work out. And it did not. So it ended up going 5 and 14. And this really mentally was a gut punch for me. This really hurt because I was so excited about this model. And again, I've had time to let this marinate here for about 3-4 days. And this model is actually still probably a good model and has a ton of potential. Something I'm not going to wager. I'm going to take a break from soccer, but the variance is what makes soccer very, very difficult to handicap and profit long-term. Meaning, like, in order to, if you look down here at the bottom, so total, this classes model that I've experimented with since August 15th, changes I made, 11.93 units, very profitable, 37 wins, 50 losses. So that's like, what, 42% win percentage, somewhere around in there, which when I ran the Monte Carlo sims, it said it could be profitable at 42%, it could be profitable at 40%, where it starts to incur a ton of risk is about 38%. So this still could work. I'm still going to track it. But the issue I have with it, and I'm going to show you this with the next model, is I'm not sure that if I'm looking at this from a business perspective, that it's a smart investment of time and money. Okay. And let me show you this other model. Now, this is the other model that I created that I felt really, really good about back in April. And it's a little bit more selective. You can see here, I started tracking this on 4/26. I did a ton of back testing with this. 425, one play, 426, it had 4. 427 looks like 6 or 7 plays. The next day, 2 plays. And this model got to very similar to the other model. I want to show you through July. No, that's not it. Yep. No, that's not units. Wait a second. Let me track this from 425 all the way up to July. So you look at that right-hand corner. So from 425 to 727, this model was at 17.45 units. Very good. And again, the other model, we just focused on playing home teams. This model, if there was value, we actually played it. So there are some away teams factored in this as well, which is going to create a ton of variance. And the variance for this model hit in August. So 17.45 units up. Let's look what happens in August. At one point, let's go to 8/22. Yeah, from August the 1st through August the 22nd, this particular model down 7.24 units. Now, it did have a little bounce back here to close out the month, 2.2 units. And that puts it now from 425 through September 2nd, 57 wins, 60 losses, 12.41 units. If you want to look at ROI, this is the total amount of units risk, 136. So we take 12.41 divided by this number, and that gives us an ROI of 9%, which is really good. I mean, this is really a good model. And I think what I'm going to have to accept, or anybody that wagers soccer, I originally had this vision that soccer was going to be a 50-unit year-round sport, or maybe even 100-unit. But in reality, with the variance, I don't think that that's possible, at least from my perspective. And I put a ton of energy. Again, I would not say I'm a sharp handicapper for soccer because I haven't proven it yet. Even though I've built some models that are profitable here, you can see it. Obviously not consistently wagered on these, but maybe this is the realization that what soccer can actually yield. If you look over here to the right, if you're curious, this is tracking it from, this was when I started this model in April, that was basically towards the end of the season for EPL, Bundesliga, Series A. And so I wanted to see if there was a difference. And this is tracking Brazil Series A and only MLS. So kind of like the start of the season through now. And that's 36-45 at 7.7 units gained. So I think the realization and my overall thoughts with soccer, I think it's a doable sport. But when there's so many other edges in profitable sports, I don't think that for me it would be. I just think there's a better ways to invest your money until I can get this thing really figured out. I think a mistake I made, I was so infatuated with it and trying to, quote, make it work. Almost like seeing that, if you've ever seen a baby try to take a square peg and put it in a circle, they're just sitting there banging it, trying to make it work. And it's a good way to learn. And that's kind of what we were doing. I don't know that, I think there were better ways to use my time and invest. For example, the infatuation we have with soccer led to me missing out on WNBA. And the WNBA model, even though I didn't track it daily, it has had 2 losing days since last Friday. So in 2 weeks, it's had 2 losing days, had a couple splits. It's been extremely profitable. That's where I should have been investing my money into WNBA. So one teaching point from all this is that you want to make sure when you're running, always treat this like a business. And it's like you have different parts of your business. You have a soccer business, or you can look at it like departments. You have a soccer department, NFL department, WNBA department. So if you have one business that's not doing well, you don't want to put all your time and money into that. You want to make sure that you're putting time and investing into the department that's making you the most money, and then try to fix the other department that's not making money. So I probably should have been investing, even, coming off of MLB, I should have paid more attention to WNBA. And realistically, that's one thing that I'm excited about now with the business, because I think my approach to the business overall is I want to run as many models as I can for all sports. It's going to be very easy to do. Chat GPT is almost like having an employee. So I'll be able to expedite the process and just looking at it from the macro. Hey, this model isn't doing well. This model is extremely profitable. Let's ride this model, anticipate maybe the market corrects. And the reason why I'm not actually going to wager on WNBA, we're getting towards the end of the season. I'm not sure how many weeks they have left. They might have like a couple weeks left. So if we jump in now, we're going to be at that time when it's not as profitable and model could potentially lose its edge. But super excited for WNBA for next year. I will go back and do a full test with the model. I'll be able to build a database relatively easy, but just a ton of things that I'm working on right now. Don't have time to do that, but I'm 100% positive, 99% positive that model is going to probably be over 20 units once we run the back test for WNBA. But the conclusion here with soccer on this particular podcast, I think this classes model could work. I still believe this model that you're looking at here is really well. What I'm going to do is I'm still going to track both these models, but as far as like analyzing it, working on it, trying to tweak it, I'm not going to do anything to either one of these. I'll wait till the quote big leagues have enough data to run from this model. This model you're looking at here runs off stats. So that'll probably be towards the end of October, I'm thinking. And then just see where both these models end up. Because again, if it ends up, somewhere around this, 15 to 20 units, I mean, that's still positive, but I just think there's, again, better use of our time investing in that with regards to sports betting overall. So anyway, so that's soccer. Next, I want to dive into classes model for NCAA football. I will say, introduction to this is probably the most fun I've ever had in building a model and developing one. This was something that was very positive last year, the first 3 weeks of the season. Didn't wager on it. Should have. That was a mistake. So I took everything that I learned from last year and applied it again to this year and made some changes. And this is looking to be very, 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 very good. So what you're looking at, and I'll walk you through some changes that I made. I did a ton of research on this. I ran a ton of Monte Carlo sims. One major change that I made, and I'm going to do this for NFL as well, and I'll show you that. May do a separate video with that, is I broke it down into 5 classes. Instead of having A, B, and C and D class, I broke it down to A, B, C, D, and E classes. So I had to cut off A classes, and you can see over here on the left. So in order to be an A class team, it's got to be via the way I ranked them 1 through 20. And so you have the B class is 21 through 49. And the C class is going to be 50 through 90. 91 through 110 is going to be D class. Obviously, there's some subjectivity in this, meaning like, why didn't you make D class 85 through 90? A long discussion about how to do that. And then finally, E class, very important how I classified E class. E class is 111 through 137. And you see we're here 137. Any FCS school is going to be an E class. Now, how I created the lines for this took a lot of work. And one thing I'll give you some really good advice building models is trying to figure out the relationship between an A team and a B team as far as score. So when an A team plays a B team, what is the expected margin of victory? That is very important to figure out if you're going to create a quote realistic line. And let me see if I can pull that up. I can go ahead and tell you. So an A to B relationship is A teams win at a very high percentage. So one thing I've realized, and if you remember from the NCAA tournament model, it was very simple the way I did classes model. I think this is probably the best way to play classes model. If you categorize it A, B, C, and D, you want to play for the A teams, and then you want to play against the bottom teams. In the NCAA tournament, I think that model ended up going like 17 and 10, up like 6 or 7 units, did really well, made it very simple. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to play against an A team, even if you're, quote, getting value. Because one other thing you need to do too, in addition to to trying to create what the margin of victory is between an A and B, and then a B and a C, and looking at that relationship. You also want to look at how many times that team has the potential to blow a team out. For example, A teams, this is very fascinating. A teams in college football will blow out their opponent 40% of the time. So that means if the line's minus 13, minus 26, more 40% of the time, they should cover that big number. And it's the same reason on the E team. I didn't really research the E team blowouts, but they do lose at a very high percentage. And also, too, if we understand what we know about spread sports, if a team wins, the majority of time they're going to cover. So to keep it simple, if you can pick the team to win, they're going to cover. If you look at the South Carolina-Virginia Tech game, the line was -7. We actually played South Carolina in that one. My quote projected line was probably like -21. Virginia Tech was a C team. South Carolina was an A team. I think I had that correct. So that line was like -21. My line getting a ton of value. South Carolina won and covered. If you look at last night, TCU was -6. No, I'm take that back. It was -3.5. My line between those two teams, I'll show you that in a second, was a B and a C, which will give us about 3 points of value. TCU won and covered. So what I want to do is just sort of review this to kind of give you an idea, and this might help you in building your own classes model. So we go back to week 1. Now, I made some changes to this. What we actually played is going to look different from this because I made some tweaks on this model Saturday and Sunday, but this is playing the model the way we're going to handicap this moving forward. And this is a really good example. You had Western Kentucky and Sam Houston. The old way, I had both of these teams as a D team. But now with the changes, Sam Houston became an E team, and we play against E teams up to -20.5, which means E teams more than likely get blown out. So Western Kentucky was a D team. So this will be a play for Western Kentucky. The line was -9.5, and they got blown out. So meaning like that was a win. Up here, you can see Kansas State. We had as an A team. Kansas State moving into I got it week 1. It should have been week 0. The next week, Kansas State dropped down to a B team, obviously because they lost it. So this particular week, grading it via the model was 1-1. Let's go over here to, it says week 2, but this is actual week 1. And I'll kind of give you an idea. This Ohio-Rutgers game is a really, really, really good example. So Ohio was a C team via the model. Rutgers was a B team. Now, the books had Ohio as a plus 15.5 favorite. Now, I had mentioned earlier, you only want to play a team if you believe they're going to win, because if you don't think they're going to win, then the odds of them covering are low. However, in the research I found in doing a lot of back testing is B and C teams don't cover at a very high percentage. So here's how I handicap this. My actual line would have been, actually I have this wrong. Let me fix this real quick. There we go. All right. So the books line, Ohio plus 15.5. So that meant Rutgers was minus 15.5. Books line. My line was actually Ohio plus 6, Rutgers minus 6. Okay. So a ton of value there with Ohio Rutgers. So let's look at the Ohio Rutgers game actual score. So you can see here that Ohio and Rutgers, it opened at 10.5. It actually moved against us all the way up, closing at 15.5. Rutgers minus 15.5. You look at the score, Ohio was 31, Rutgers was 34. So now we go back to the model now. So the point is the relationship from a C to B, again, this is subjective, but I have it averaging somewhere around 6 points, basically a touchdown separation between a C and B team. So the trigger point for the model, I was playing for any C or B team when we were getting 14.5. Why? Because again, that gives us a nice margin. Again, I could probably play it at a smaller number, but the testing showed that we should probably play this early in the season at 14.5. Now, what's probably going to happen later in the season as these lines become extremely sharp, we might have to lower our margin, meaning like it's going to be rare to see a B and the C team where the C team's getting 15.5 points. More than likely, it'll be a much tighter line, and I'll give you an example of that if we scroll down to last night. Meaning that the market adjusts the lines that the sports book post later in the season, say around week 4, we might have to make some adjustments to the model. And this is a really good example of the TCU North Carolina game. So again, TCU books line, they were -3. We'll put that in. I think it was like 3.5. Let's put -3.5. So North Carolina was +3.5. Probably TCU would have been favored if that game was at home. They were away. So that lowered it. Our line, TCU -6. And so technically we had some value there with TCU. TCU wins in a blowout. So what I'm anticipating as the season wears on, this will become not the model, the books line, because we will have, 3 weeks of information. The books lines will become a lot sharper, and we might have to adjust our parameters for a trigger point. For example, South Carolina, Virginia Tech, we had South Carolina an A team. Virginia Tech is a C team. And I think the old model, the way I capped it until I made the classes changes, Virginia Tech was a B team. So that's been a huge change there. And that's something you can actually copy from me if you're looking to build a classes model. So South Carolina was, -7, line dipped down to 6.5, ended up closing at 7. So you got some sharps bumping it back up there to 7 late. And my actual line for an A to C team would be -21. So I'm saying if these two teams played again or later in the season, this line would probably be South Carolina -9.5. So the books will adjust. And if we go back through this, and I'll just show you, we'll look at some of these plays here and kind of talk about them. Jacksonville State was a D team. UFC, Jacksonville State was getting 20.5. So again, same deal with D and a C team is the same as a C and a B. That relationship should be about a touchdown. We were getting 20.5 points. Jacksonville State covered. Wyoming and Akron, this was another big change. We actually played Akron physical wager, and that was actually a mistake until I made tweaks to this. Akron, with the new adjustments, instead of a D versus D team, which should have been what I call a 50-50 game, we had Akron as an E team. So we play against all E teams if the line is -20.5 or below. So Wyoming was -5.5. I ran my line at -10, and Wyoming actually wins 10-0. All right, San Diego State was playing an FCS school. San Diego State was a D team. The line was -20. So obviously they won in a blowout. I think they won like 27-0. So again, we play against E teams if the line is -21 or greater. Now I want to go back and show you one other thing and look at this from week 0. UNLV was playing Idaho. We actually played Idaho. So another angle you can look at. This is only effective early in the season when an E team is getting over 21.5 points. So I think the line was, we talked about this last week. Line was +30. So that's more points. That will be very difficult for a C team playing against an E team to cover that many points. Now, the new model triggers that as a no play because we don't want to play 4 E teams, but definitely something we might be able to add in and find some value. But you have to be careful because those E teams will get blown out. All right, Army playing an E team here. This was a loss. If you're looking right here, my bad. This is the units, me grading it. And this is the sports book line here. And this is my line over here. Kennesaw, Wake Forest. So Wake Forest was -19. Kennesaw State gave them a battle. I think Wake Forest won 10-9. App State and Charlotte, another really good example of the old way I was capping this. We actually played Charlotte, and this was a loss. App State was a D team. Charlotte was an E team. App State wins in a blowout. Sportsbook line -3. I had this line basically about a touchdown. So between classes, if we're one class off, it's looking at, well, with the exception of an E-class, we would play anything up to -20.5. So that was a win via the model. Auburn, Baylor, again, really good example here of dividing those classes up. And I'll show you this. Let's go over here and look at Auburn. So we had Auburn as an A team, Baylor as a B. The old way I had this classified, Baylor would have been a B team. So what I did was made it A teams to be, quote, elite. You can see here, Auburn we had as 15 and Baylor was 29. Now, the old A class would have been 1 through 30, but that's just too broad of a range, meaning like it wasn't big enough margin, meaning if I have a team that's 26 via the classes model and they're playing against a team that's 7, that's going to be even, and it's really not. So with the adjustment, instead of that being a no play, that was actually a play now in favor of Auburn there. I think I skipped past it. Yep. And an A team to a B team, A teams tend to blow out. So that relationship is anywhere from, say, 10 points to 14 points. So that was a play via the model, and that was a win. You take a look at Tennessee and Syracuse, same deal there, A to C relationship. So that's about 3 touchdowns. Tennessee won and covered that. Sportsbook line -13.5. This was a really interesting game. Look at Purdue and Ball State. The line was -16. Was really surprised to see Purdue as a D class, but that's what we had them. They won and covered in a blowout. That was probably like the easiest game to spot and see. But you can see this pattern here. Florida Atlantic playing against Maryland. Maryland was a C team. These E teams that are bottom tend to get blown out a lot. Maryland wins in a blowout. Can't remember the final score of that, 37-7, something like that. And then let's wrap this up and scroll down here to the bottom. Texas, Ohio State, you can see both of those were 8 teams, so that was a good classification for the model, and of course the books line as well. Here's another one, Old Dominion and Indiana. Old Dominion was getting plus 23.5. I think Indiana was actually ranked, but then the way I ran the classes model, we had them as a B team. A lot of people probably played Indiana, lost on that one. Model had Old Dominion there covering simply because trigger point being 14.5. So anyway, we'll scroll down to the very bottom here. So if you add all this up, so the model applying the way that we're capping it now, 19-9 plus 9.1 units for week 1. And that was playing all spreads there. So really excited about this. We'll probably keep this same approach for weeks 2 and weeks 3. One thing I noticed in the back testing, once we get to week 4, books will tend to adjust. So we won't have, if a B team is playing a C team, we probably won't see the C team at like, plus 20.5 or plus 17. That line will be a lot tighter. So we might have to make some adjustments to the model there. But again, really excited about this model. I'm going to come back tomorrow and probably post an NFL classes preview for you. We have a game. Today's Tuesday. Yeah, we'll do it on Wednesday. NFL season kicks off on Thursday night. I'll show you my classes model, some adjustments. We factored in the E-class on it as well. So look forward to that tomorrow. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning into the podcast. Talk to y'all later this week. Peace.